Welcome, Commissioner Salgado here. Now, I want you all to imagine this perfect scenario where Tyler and Sam both lose 5 games in a row, me and Daddy both win 5 games in a row, we face each other in the Western Conference Championship. Trent Richardson, of course, carries my team to victory with 40-point performance, and then I meet Burns in the Shiva and kick his ass. Now, if that doesn't happen, I will settle for getting C.J. Spiller for my kicker. And I replaced my kicker with Nick Folk, the number 4 overall kicker, so get the Folk out of here. Otherwise, I believe I was Sacco bound and I was determined to get my head through the toilet bowl, because this has been the worst season so far for me. I don't have a chance unless that perfect storm happens. Now, I do have a chance to beat Jenkins this week, and I believe I can do it. Burns murdered me last week, and it's all because I'm a player killer. Everybody dies on my roster. Mike Williams, Sidney Rice, David Wilson, Julio Jones, Jermichael Finley, Santonio Holmes, and Brandon Jacobs, just to name a few, have all died on my roster. Now, Tom Brady might as well be dead because he's such a chump. Biggest turd of the season. Maybe had one 20-point performance for me. What a turd. I'll never draft Tom Brady again because of this. Sam, on the other hand, got Drew Brees putting up 30 points every week. It's just not fair. I bet Sam's floating on a Belize after last week's win over Jenkins. Drew Brees, he did it again. Sam even had 2 goose eggs on his starting lineup, and it didn't seem to matter. He still won. He has the best fantasy luck out of anybody I've ever met. This week, he's facing Josh McCown in the tight buttholes. Sam's number seems to drop off around this time of year. Maybe it'll happen again. Maybe Daddy can go in there and steal another one. Sam, he has no depth, and that's what's going to cost him the Shiva, in my opinion. He needs to make a couple moves, get a little bit more depth on his roster, and then we'll talk about having it in the bag. Belligerent midgets. Yeah, Mitch, I'm not giving up on it. Scam Newton's been carrying your team. Now, you do have the wide receivers on lockdown. Megatron, of course, freaked out last week, broke records. You have Jordy Nelson and Victor Cruz salsa dancing every week. Now, only if your running backs could match their performances, your team would be a lock for the Shiva, in my opinion. You're making a strong, quiet run. You need to win this week the most. You face that dumbass Burns. Hopefully his disease doesn't spread on to you. To me, it looks like you have the advantage, and you're only 1 game back, so good luck. Kenny Conn and the Diablos, thank you. You saved my ass. I truly believe that was the move that will keep me out of the Sacco, or at least not out of it, but at least from having the toilet bowl hang around my neck. You may end up replacing Sam as the champ in the West, too. You have more depth in his roster. Plus, your roster's on fire right now. You got Josh Gordon and A.J. Green blowing it up as wide receivers. Gio and Eddie Lacy, rookie running backs of the year, and you happen to have both of them. The only question in my mind is your quarterback. You have Phillip Rivers and Alex Smith. Both are hit and miss. If you only had a stud, I'd say that you'd probably already replaced Sam because he has no depth, whereas you do. Now, you need to beat the Billy Goats this week, and you have a perfect storm. He's got half his team on bye, so if there's any week that you wanted to face the Billy Goats, it'd be this week. Shoes. Speaking of Billy Goats, you're fucked. When you have to start Tolbert, Keenan Allen, Golden Tate, and Torrey Smith, all which are good, viable third flex options, but when you have to start them all as your skill players, you're fucked. Now you have to really lean on Aaron Rodgers and Lashady this week. If they don't blow it up, Kenny Conn has a really good chance of beating you. You barely squeaked out a win last week for Spencer, and really it was kind of Spencer's fault. His coaching could have been a little bit better, or if RG3 or Marshawn Lynch would have had more than a combined 5 points, I think that you would have lost. So far it looks like it's going to be cutthroat in the Western Conference between you, Sam, and Mitchell. Here at the end, we're going to see who emerges. Poor Spencer. He needs bad things to happen to Aaron and Mitchell. All players are hit and miss on his team, it seems like. He's coming off that tough loss that I just mentioned. But he's facing an also depthless Aaron this week. Who should have came to the draft? That's what he has to blame it on. You should have dropped out of graduate school and just come to the draft like the rest of the men, and you'd have a successful fantasy football run. You blame it on school. But at least you're taking your medicine out in Colorado. Well, I think Spencer, he's going to need a redemption week this week. Otherwise, it looks like you're in the Sacco race with me and Daddy. We'll know after the noon game, that's for sure. I think you guys got like 3/4 of your players playing at the noon game. It's a tough bye week for both of you, so at least that's fair, level playing ground. Hey, Aaron, who am I to judge? You're a great American hero. We all know that. Maybe he doesn't need any depth. Maybe he doesn't want depth. He's the only dynasty. You know, he's the not the Belichick, but the I guess you call him the Dick Vermeil of our league. He's the ultimate Sandman, and he has Jamal Charles. Jamal Charles can probably do it all by himself. Isn't that enough? It keeps me up at night knowing that I didn't pick Jamal Charles and I picked T. Rich. But like I said, that's already going to pay off for me at the end of the season when T. Rich has that performance over Daddy that leads me to the Shiva versus Burns. Anyway, you're coming off a tough loss to Daddy, who had a solid showing, and it's all because you're weak wide receiving core. You need to make a move too, or hope to God that somebody starts playing for you. Team VD, getting some Danny Woodhead up in that bitch. Tainting my Chargers. Jeez. His team's full of studs. It's not fair. Now he has some depth too, thanks to the waiver. He's got Steven Jackson back. His team's just looking more and scary each week. Woodhead, Terrence Williams, Sanders, Jones, Michael Floyd, Bilal Powell, all depth that you've added. It's a tough team. If you don't win, it's a disgrace because really you've de-weighted us somehow. You should win. All I can hope for is that somebody beats you and that you lose and you drop the ball like you do every week. Now you have the matchup this week. It's the Beast in the East, you and Mitchell. It's a close call. It's going to come down to the running backs. Moving on to Jenkins, who faces me. Hopefully your team be losers this week, not to be losers. At least I hope. I'm lucky that you're playing Slacko Flacco instead of Mike Vick. You can't play him because I traded you. Who's your other quarterback? Who cares? Not that big of a deal. Tough running back core. That's who's going to carry you. You got Ridley, Arian Foster, DeMarco Murray. That's tough if you faced anybody. It's your wide receivers, which are few and far between this year. They all keep getting hurt. Devon Austin was a big bust. He was supposed to have a breakout year. I really saved some guys from picking him up in the draft when I drafted him for you. Santana Moss, he's just old. But now that I say that, he'll probably score 3 touchdowns this week. So there you go. Hopefully the Chiefs D takes it easy on me. Otherwise, you're going to be qualified for the Sacco race too. Now, Daddy, got a whole page just dedicated to you. Call it Daddy's page. Nice win over Aaron. Good league note. That's probably the good juju that you got that carried you into that win. You really need to beat Sam this week. He's kind of down and out. You have the chance to go in there and steal one. Hopefully you do. It's going to be hard without the superhuman Peyton Manning. Chris Johnson, I feel like he's going to have a big week. I think T.Y. Hilton may have a big week. He's overdue for another good showing, especially with Reggie Wayne out now. T.Y. is going to have to step up. Maybe Fred Jackson will get hurt and C.J. Spiller will get all the carries. That's the only negative thing I can hope for your team. But you're putting a lot of trust in that turd Josh McCown. He's had starting opportunities before, but he usually has like one decent game where people start believing in him. So maybe that's that one decent game. Hopefully for you, they forget about Brandon Marshall. And no, you don't have Brandon Marshall. Don't forget about Brandon Marshall when it comes. I don't even know what that note's about actually. Moving on. You're one pass away from a good night. If McCown comes through, yeah, that's what the note is. If he dumps it off to Forte or Brandon Marshall, he could have a good night. He has the tools there to have a good night. But if he doesn't, if he throws a bunch of picks, I feel bad for you. Although there's not really any other good choices on the waiver. Sam Smash, hopefully he goes down. Hopefully that perfect scenario I mentioned at the beginning works for you. And to PS, you guys, I want to show you this. Where's that letter I got? Son of a bitch. The PS is to be continued. There'll be a second video. Follow.